When I was 8, my father told me, if anyone calls you a Jap, punch them in the face. Becoming aware of being Asian, even half Asian, began with a hair-triggered chip placed on my shoulder. It also ignited a search, a journey, answers to the question, what does it mean to be home? When my mother was a child, she, along with her parents and older sister, were given 72 hours to pack what belongings they could carry and report to Tulare Racetrack, where they lived in horse stables before being interned at Tule Lake, victims of Executive Order 9066. They and 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry, the vast majority U.S. citizens, were imprisoned in this country for 3 years. They had committed no crime other than being Japanese American. They had no trial or hearing. What does it mean to be home in America? Part rebellion against my Japanese heritage, part fascination with China, I majored in Mandarin in college, got a master's in China studies, and spent 7 years living in mainland China and Taiwan. In China, I was a foreigner, always outside looking in, a humbling lesson when the arrogance of youth most needed it. My separateness providing me a lens into myself from an outside perspective. When I returned to the Bay Area, I found comfort in San Francisco Chinatown. I still do today. I'm again a foreigner in a town with so much history within a city within a country that, in spite of mixed messages, I am supposed to belong to. The energy, the sights and sounds in Chinatown feel familiar and foreign. A reminder that my leaving created an indelible mark that will never be faded about who I am and what I might become. Bruce Lee was born here in Chinatown in 1940, was raised in Hong Kong, and returned to these streets 18 years later. I imagine Bruce walking these streets and alleyways heavy with history, foreign but familiar. The stories here would inspire scripts he penned, the first one about a Shaolin monk roaming the American West in the 1800s alone. Hollywood refused Bruce for the lead and adapted the storyline around a less Asian-looking actor. The show became a successful series called Kung Fu. Bruce Lee's attempt to find a home in Hollywood was rejected, so he returned to Hong Kong to make his first blockbuster film, The Big Boss, in 1971. This decision propelled him into becoming the global icon he is today. What does it really mean to be home? 50 years after his passing, another script by Bruce Lee was released from his archives and developed into a TV series. The show is called Warrior. Warrior's protagonist, Assam, arrives in San Francisco in 1870, a gifted martial artist with a Caucasian grandparent, like Bruce Lee. Assam is played by Andrew Koji, a half-Japanese, half-white guy raised in the West, like me. In the opening sequence of episode 1, this happens.
I wouldn't do that again if I were you.
Fucking slang can talk American.
Holy shit. Do it again. Say something.
I didn't travel halfway across the world in that damn boat just to amuse a few fat white fucks. There. I said something.
You think because you speak American, you can talk shit to me?
Well, you have to admit it helps.
Somebody chink needs to learn his place. You think you can take me on?
That's the wrong question.
Oh yeah? What's the right one?
The right question is, do you really want to find out?
I was hooked. I imagined Warrior would bring throngs of Asian fanboys and people of all walks of life descending into San Francisco Chinatown, wanting to explore the same streets and history where the action took place, the streets and stories that inspired Bruce Lee to write this. I plunged into the research and created an Airbnb experience called The Fighting History of San Francisco Chinatown, tracing the Chinese immigrant experience from China to this city. The Chinese came for reasons many immigrants do, escaping chaos and suffering in pursuit of a better life. They fled war and famine for the gold rush dreams of San Francisco. Upon arriving in the late 1840s and 1850s, their efforts to mine gold was thwarted by nativists who lynched them, chased them from claims, told them you have no right to exploit this land for it is ours. This will never be your home. Chinatown was born out of a drive to survive, a 90% bachelor society scraping out an existence doing work traditionally done by women. Laundry, cooking, filling gaps while trying to retain their traditions and memories. From the moment they set foot on these shores and for decades after, the Chinese could not vote, become citizens, testify against a white man, own land, or marry outside their race. In 1882, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, the first and only piece of U.S. legislation banning a race of people from entry into this country. This would remain in effect for nearly 70 years. In 1900, the Chinese were blamed for an outbreak of bubonic plague in San Francisco. The main newspaper of the day stated Chinatown should be depopulated, its buildings leveled by fire, and its tunnels and cellars laid bare. 6 years later, the 1906 earthquake provided political justification to forcibly relocate the Chinese and Chinatown to the swamps of Hunters Point. All of this and Chinatown remains, against all odds, against powerful forces actively pushing to deny them a place. The Chinese had the courage and strength to say, "We will not be denied our rights as human beings. We will survive and thrive with or without your permission, and we will do so here, in San Francisco, in the heart of the city." By the mid-1960s, the ban against Chinese immigration was lifted. New immigrants arrived in Chinatown to encounter American-born Chinese, ABCs, in a city that was the epicenter of tremendous change and upheaval in America. Conjure images of San Francisco in 1967, and one thinks of the Summer of Love, Timothy Leary, LSD, the Grateful Dead, the Black Panthers, Vietnam War protests, the civil rights and women's rights movement. Chinatown, its people, never make that highlight reel. So where do we fit in? Growing up, my perception of Asian men in the 60s was shaped by Hollywood tropes: coolies, houseboys, inscrutable demons, clowns, subservient, sexless servants. One fall day 2 years ago, something shifted. Jerry Jew appeared on my tour with his friend Lester Yee. Now in their 70s, both had come of age in Chinatown during the 60s. Before we started the tour, Jerry smiled and said, "We grew up in Chinatown, Sonny. Teach us something." Well, Jerry ended up teaching me. When the pandemic locked us down, Jerry showed me pictures he had taken while studying photography at San Francisco State University in the late 60s. Through these pictures, I learned about leeways.
Mike, how are you? Good. Pleasure to see you, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, no problem. Oh, it's over here. All right, right on. So amazing. Yeah. Oh, boy.
Yeah, leeway.
It's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, that's Leeways.
Leeways was founded by ABC gangsters and a Japanese-American gang member in 1967, the same year my family moved to San Francisco. What started as a pool hall became a nonprofit dedicated to helping Chinatown youth find employment and a place to be. A place to play pool that wasn't in Little Italy or Manila Town. A place by them, for them. A place they could call their own. Asian gang members, ABCs, and immigrants passed through, did deals, shared news, and for a while tried to be the unity and peace on this neutral ground in gangland Chinatown. Like the 60s, Leeways began with idealism and dreams. But history reminds us that beautiful intentions are only one element on a broad spectrum of competing forces. As the 60s came to a close, Leeways became radicalized, a faction of the Red Guard movement. Chinatown 6 companies and SFPD eventually collaborated to annihilate the organization. But this is not about the history of Leeways, but it is our history that brought Leeways into being. The cultural transformation in this period brought a shift of focus from how will we survive to dreams of what could we someday be? What can we create and make outside the lines of the limitations our parents and the system say we must inherit? In life, threads intersect at different times, revealing reasons for appearing at unexpected moments. In 2006, with my 5-year-old son, I had an altercation with San Jose Asian gang members. That moment compelled me to write a spoken word piece I've never performed in front of any audience. I'd all but forgotten it until I heard Jerry's stories and saw his pictures. Jerry passed away on January 2nd, 2021. He never got to hear this. Our time together, while short, was just enough for him to know he held a puzzle piece, a key to my own awakening. This is for you, Jerry. I'll remember you through your photos and your stories. Teenage Asian flexing to be gangsters. Rebelling against model minority stereotypes, 1600 SAT piano prodigies and parents. With cracked hands, broken English, country ways out of place. These kids are searching for a home. They don't feel American, nor do they fit in the land of their parents, a foot in two worlds, a home in none. Frustration burning under Asian traditions of bearing suffering in silence. And I want to tell them what I'll tell my son. Your ancestors crushed mountains into valleys with 1 million pairs of bare feet running from 10,000 wars and man-made famine. Withered women kneeling on scorched black moonscapes praying for rain. Broken men clawing torn nails through angry red soil for one more grain of rice. Balloon-bellied children battling for scraps with lead pipes and rocks. Eyelids coated in concrete dust, swirling up from rubble of ancient cities being torn down around them. Your parents abandoned the land of their home. Prostitute souls to factory fly traps blooming on the coast. When given a chance to stow away, rusted container, slow boat from China to America, they take it. Shackled to triad mafia debt, eating only dreams of giving you a better life. And upon touching U.S. shores, they cupped a handful of dirt, held it up to your lips, said, breathe in the scent of this earth, and with it our promise that this land will be better than home. Now they get lost watching American TV with the sound off. Go blind stitching in sweatshops for copper nickels on Old Gold Mountain, the Chinese name for San Francisco. See your fake gold chains swinging on $30 shirts, embroidered with 50 cents face, stitched by your mother who makes less than that rapper's name, and they can't understand why their tears and blood stains isn't all the bling you should care about wearing. Can't comprehend how hip-hop's rhythm gives you a haven in this American generation, the closest place you've found to a home. Your father and mother cry when alone. They keep kissing a country that rarely kisses back or jams tongues in their mouths violent. While the old country whispers Toisan poems across the Pacific, children cut out their native tongues and bury them for English. Still, your parents dream of a day they can rest. U.S. soil sprinkled on their chest, knowing the risks they took gave you a fighting chance to find a land you will grow to love. A land that you will teach to love you back. That someday you will remember the scent of the earth your parents held to your lips, scent of the motherland ingrained in your skin, released in your sweat, drip in your eyes, and for the very first time see through all of your tears that someday you will find your way home. What will become of San Francisco Chinatown post-pandemic remains uncertain. The COVID-19 death rate among the Asian population is the highest of all racial categories in San Francisco. Hate crimes against Asians have exploded, a 1,900% increase in 1 year. 50% of Chinatown businesses may not survive. Gentrification, shifting demographics, successful assimilation. What will Chinatown mean for those who remain and those who choose to leave it? If survival is the ability to adapt and bend to changing conditions, then the story of Asians in this country is a story of resilience. Resilience doesn't mean stasis, permanence, or absence of movement. The goal for many residents of Chinatown is to someday be able to leave it for someplace better. This is not the abandonment of Chinese identity, it is the evolution of it. The expansion of, the redrawing of boundaries, the pushing out of limits. Today, Asians represent 34% of San Francisco's population. Their economic and political influence and power have exceeded all of our ancestors' expectations. With this expansion, our quest for identity shifts. Honor where we came from, feel the weight of legacy, yes, but also ask ourselves, what do we as individual human beings want to be in this present moment? Every new generation is unlike any other before it. Only one generation removed and still so easy to forget. So maybe this is all there ever was supposed to be. a walking tour through time and space, an excuse to pay our predecessors a visit, to say thank you for every second of it, the brutal and the beautiful, the pain and the pleasure, all of the love and dreams, every ounce of suffering and hate, all of it. We own it all. It's part of us. We belong to it, and it to us. What Chinatown represents exists within the heart. It never really leaves us. When asked if he felt more North American or Chinese, Bruce Lee paraphrased Confucius. He said, "I just want to be known as a human being, because under the sky, under heaven, there is but one family, and it just so happens that people are different." Now, through this journey, I've learned this. We are one family, made of identical stardust, travelers on a journey of self-discovery on this little blue marble hurtling through space, trying to find and create a place within we can call our own. And to find ourselves, we push and go on. We push to go on, and we hope we go far. And when we are far, we realize to be far is nothing more than returning. The journey itself, the destination. Truth unfolding like a spiral staircase of endless deeper questions, we catch glimpses of who we are sometimes, but can't believe it. The truth is, who we truly are never left us, because we never left it. In the end, we find the endless. There is nothing more to search for. Everything we ever longed for has always been here all along, waiting for us to come home.
We found air, we found moments, surrounded by all these lies. We found hope. I was following smoke till we found light. We found a way.